earGROUND Radio. New voices amplified.
So Vic, how are things? How's 2020?
I think 2020 is so far a good year, and I hope it stays that way. But the goodness of it is in the way I am wanting to be positive about the year. Under the difficult times, we got to remain positive and optimistic that things will turn around someday. And that's the attitude I've entered 2020 with. So I'm very optimistic of what I am personally going to do to make my year better for me.
You mentioned a very valid point that the situation right now is not so good. How are you going to compose yourself as an artist, considering the situation that's happening in the country? A lot of gigs are happening, low turnouts, etc., etc. How are you going to maintain yourself come 2020?
Look, it's very difficult, but as artists, we live in the trenches. Even we go back as far as the liberation struggle, artists used to sing for whatever was happening at that time. And through all the difficult times, we've always stood our ground and sung for the people. So this is a calling. This is what we do on a day-to-day basis. This is what puts bread on our table. And under those difficult circumstances, the little that we get, we got to keep going. We can't stop making music. So that's the attitude that I've got. That, over the horizon, things will get better.
Speaking of attitude, today I've been reading a lot about someone who mentioned something on fame, that a lot of artists tend to lose focus when some sort of fame comes through. Yes. How do you compose yourself as an individual, and what would be your message to the young artists out there?
True. What we've got to understand is fame is actually in what we do. It's the song or the songs that make you famous. But because you are famous, there's a lot of temptation around, but it's one's personal attitude. I've told myself that I'm just an ordinary person. It's a God-given gift that I just dish out to the people, but I remain who I am. Victor and my music are two different things. So Victor lives his own life, the music lives its life that is widespread, and that gives the person who makes the music fame. But it doesn't change who I am, really.
So you've maintained a low profile for a long time. How do you do that, man?
Look, like I was saying, this difficult situation has been over quite a long period of time. And at times you got to hibernate and get all your creative senses in place so that by the time you produce something, it must be worthwhile. It must last the years. I last produced my album in 2014 and I launched one last year. So that's like a good 5 years of no production. But that last album sustained me for those 5 years. So I've already done an album that I know will sustain me for a couple more years. But this is not to say that I won't have an album this year or next year. As an artist, you are working all the time. You are making music all the time. It's a very difficult job, because how do you make people happy? Think about it.
So should we expect an album this year?
Possibly an album this year. I launched one in November, so why not? Why not? There's a chance I'll have another album this year.
And speaking about the November album, what's the plan in terms of touring and marketing the album out there?
As usual, the album is called Dacha. We are currently compiling some videos for the album, so that's going to play a big role in terms of marketing the album. But yeah, we were in Kenya a few weeks ago, and we played some of the songs from that album, and the reception was excellent. So we've got another good album.
And speaking of Kenya, what's the favorite country that you've toured as an individual, and what sort of reception did you get out there?
I've enjoyed Africa more. I was in Tanzania, and the reception was exceptional at a festival called Knowledge Arts and Networking Festival, Cannes. It is such a wonderful atmosphere and a very receptive crowd, and for me, it's one of the best places I've performed in.
You mentioned a festival. In Zimbabwe, we have festivals. For example, Haifa. Are we at that level like other festivals you've been performed out there?
Look, Haifa was a very beautiful festival. Unfortunately, it hasn't been running for the last 2 years. And what that does is it lessens the opportunities for us artists. It was a well-run festival, and our wish was to have 2 or 3 more of that kind of festival. We do understand the standards. We just need the environment to be correct for us to be able to do what we are supposed to do. I don't think running a festival, our standards of festival is any bad. It's just as good as all over the world, but we just need the environment to be right, because that stimulates positivity. It gets people to attend these festivals in huge numbers. So our wish is to get back on track in terms of the festivals that we've had over the years.
And speaking of festivals and support, has the government been forthcoming? And what's your take on the current Minister of Arts, Kirsty Coventry? Is he pushing the agenda of the arts in Zimbabwe?
Look, like I said, I'm looking at things from a positive way. I'm being optimistic, and I think it takes some of us to engage the minister to share our vision and idea so that she performs to what our requirements are. So I will not say she's doing great or she's doing badly before we massively engage her as artists and draw out an agenda with goals that we need to achieve in the coming years.
So you mentioned sharing ideas. If you were to get a one-on-one with her, what would you tell her?
Well, I'm an advocate for Zimbabwean music. And when I say advocate, I really stand up for what Zimbabwean musicians do. And when I talk of Zimbabwean musicians, I'm talking of the real music, from the traditional music. We've got worldwide famous groups that we are not taking advantage of. For example, we've got Mokomba traveling around the world that we should make ambassadors naturally. It's the music that gets people to come to Zimbabwe. It's the music we play or music that is heard out there that delivers the Zimbabwean story. Not just people wearing suits and going to sell the Vitoria Falls with pamphlets. But if you take music to the world and tell those people that you are from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe has the Vitoria Falls, Great Zimbabwe, and all these tourist attraction areas, you see the response.
Interesting perspective that you bring out there. How are you selling Zimbabwe yourself as an individual when you go out there? What's your message to the people?
Absolutely, I come from a beautiful country, and it's my duty to represent my country. And if I'm representing the country, I deserve the support like everyone else. So if I don't get the support, at times it becomes difficult to then, speak more positively about the country. But I've always been optimistic and positive about the country, regardless of the problems we face. So the more the support, the more it stimulates everyone who goes out there to speak positively and to sell the country in a positive way.
Victor, a positive guy, a positive person. Should we expect any videos in 2020?
Yes, definitely.
Which ones should we expect?
Videos are coming. The title track Ndacha and a couple more videos. and we are visiting our old songs that we never did videos for. So yeah, definitely going to be lots of videos.
Do you miss Tuku?
Hey, I miss a lot of musicians. I miss Tuku, and I mean, we've had such wonderful musicians, and they are irreplaceable. Oliver Mtukudzi, Choniso Maraire, Andy Brown, and all these musicians who have passed on. It's very difficult for us. We have lost our icons, and it's always difficult to, we can't replace such people.
What's your final message to people who can at least come there and match the standards of the certain people you miss?
Look, I would want more artists from a young age, more arts-oriented activities in schools that build stars from a young age. The reason we struggle is we tend to want to start our careers later on without identifying the strengths of our children.
Later on is another option.
Yes, it's another option, absolutely correct. So what we need to do is to nurture our young, and they will definitely rise above us. We always want our children to be better than us.
Who's responsible for that? The parent, the government, the institution? Who's responsible?
Right, it's a collective responsibility. It's a collective responsibility. The parents, the institutions, the government, and all the stakeholders.
Vic, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Cheers, all the best in 2020.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. earGROUND Radio. New voices amplified.